All right, so you're thinking about doing business in Saudi Arabia. Exciting stuff. But before you jump into that, before you dive in, head first, let's talk about something crucial, the legal system. We're going to do a deep dive today on how to navigate that, and more specifically, how language can actually make or break your venture over there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, everyone thinks, oh, English, global business, everyone speaks English, right?
Hmm.
But in the Saudi legal system, things are, well, a little different.
Yeah, and we've got Bakhat Amri, a legal expert, by the way, with a background in, get this, computer science AND translation.
Mm.
He's seen firsthand how companies, international companies, can really trip up if they don't get the language thing right.
And he points out that a lot of people think, oh, I got my contracts translated into English. I'm good. But not so fast.
So, like, what's the catch? What's the real deal here?
It all comes down to this one thing, Article 36, the law of the judiciary in Saudi Arabia. What it says, basically, is that Arabic, that's it, only Arabic is the official language of the courts.
Oh, wow. So, like, I could have the best contract in the world written perfectly in English, and it wouldn't mean anything.
Well, it means something. But when it comes to a legal dispute, the Arabic version, that's the one the courts are going to look at. That's the one that matters. It's like, imagine, right, you've got this playbook in English, but the referee's only using the Arabic rule book. Could be a problem.
Yeah, that seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, exactly. Amar told us about this case, a real estate deal gone wrong, a mistranslation. Just one little clause about liability almost cost a company millions.
Hmm?
Millions. It's crazy how these small errors, they can turn into financial nightmares,
Hmm.
especially when you're dealing with, big money.
That's a serious wake-up call for sure. So it's not just understanding the language, it's understanding the legal weight of each word.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where getting good translations, really good translations becomes, well, less of a nice to have and more of a must have. Emery's seen it all, inaccurate translations, rush translations, and fixing those mistakes. Oh man, it costs way more than just doing it right the first time.
I bet you got some stories.
Oh yeah, definitely. So there was this tech company trying to launch a new product in Saudi Arabia, right? And they thought, hey, let's just use machine translation. Quick and cheap, get it done.
Oh yeah, classic cutting corners. What could go wrong?
Right. Well, a lot, it turns out. The machine translation, it messed up a key technical term, totally butchered it. And instead of their marketing materials highlighting all the cool features, they ended up saying some, well, pretty embarrassing stuff. They had to pull the whole campaign. Cost them months of delay, tons of money to fix.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt. So I guess relying on machine translation for anything important like legal stuff or technical specs, that's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, for sure. Machine translation, it's okay for getting the general idea, or for casual stuff. But when it comes to anything legally binding or, complicated technical stuff, you got to have a human translator. Someone who really gets both languages and the subject matter.
Okay, so finding the right translator, that's crucial. But what exactly should we be looking for? Someone with a legal background, maybe?
Ideally, yes. You want someone who specializes in legal translations, who knows both English and Arabic legal terms inside and out. And don't be afraid to ask about their experience. Have they worked on similar projects before? You want someone who's been there, done that, who knows how to handle the Saudi legal system. You wouldn't want a general doctor performing brain surgery, right? You need a specialist.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. So finding a specialist is key. But what about communication? Like, once you've got the right person?
Oh yeah, communication is huge. Before you even send anything to be translated, talk to the translator. Explain your business, what the document is for, any specific terms you use, anything like that. The more info they have, the better the translation's going to be.
It's like giving them a map, a roadmap to your business so they can navigate the language, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask questions throughout the process. A good translator, they'll be happy to explain things, their choices, why they did what they did. It's a team effort. The best results come when everyone's on the same page.
We mentioned translation memories and terminology databases before. Can you tell me a bit more about those? How do they help businesses in Saudi Arabia?
Sure. So imagine you've got this library, right? Digital library with all your company's documents, but translated into Arabic perfectly with your specific terms and style. That's basically what a translation memory is. It stores all those translated bits. So you don't have to start from scratch every time.
So it's not just about words, it's about like a consistent voice,
Yeah.
right? Across all your stuff.
Exactly. And then you've got terminology databases. They're like like dictionaries, but specifically for your company, with the English and Arabic terms you prefer.
Yeah.
Super important in fields like law and tech, where words have very precise meanings.
It's like creating a shared language, right? Between your company and your Saudi partners. Everyone understands each other perfectly.
That's it. And these tools, they're not just for big companies. Even small businesses can use them, especially if they plan to do business in Saudi Arabia long term.
So we've covered a lot, the legal stuff, the Arabic language, the risks of bad translations, finding good translators, using those special tools. It's a lot. But what's the main takeaway? What do you want people to remember?
I think the most important thing is this. Language, it's not just for communication. It's a strategic tool in Saudi Arabia, in the business world. You got to invest in it, treat it right, and it'll pay off big time.
I like that. Language as a strategic asset. Very cool. But let's be real. Even with the best translators and tools, mistakes can happen. What can businesses do to minimize those risks, to make sure everything is as accurate as possible?
That's a great question. And it's something that Amory really emphasizes. One key thing is having a good review process built into your translation workflow. So you're saying, like, don't just trust the translator blindly. Have someone else check it over.
Exactly. Someone who really knows both languages and understands the whole Saudi legal and business scene. They might catch something the translator missed.
Yeah, like a quality control check. Makes
Oh,
sense.
and it shouldn't be just a one-time thing, right? It should be part of the whole process from the very beginning when you're writing the documents all the way to the end before anything gets signed or, goes out there.
Absolutely. It's about like making sure accuracy is just part of how you do things,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to language in Saudi Arabia. It's not just a box to check. It's a core part of your strategy there.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about, legal accuracy, finding the right translators, using those cool tools, but what about the cultural side of things? How does that play into all this?
Oh, that's huge and often overlooked. Language, it's not just words, it's a reflection of the whole culture, values, how people do things. And in Saudi Arabia, culture is a big deal, especially in business. You got to understand those nuances.
So it's not enough to just translate the words. You need to translate the meaning behind them, right?
Yes.
Make sure it fits the cultural context.
Exactly. And that's where things can get tricky. I mean, something that might work great in the West, like a slogan or a brand name,
Yeah.
could be totally wrong, even offensive in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, I can imagine. Like a joke that lands well in one place could be a disaster in another. Any real life examples come to mind?
Yeah, there was this clothing brand, big one, trying to launch a new line of athletic wear, right? Their tagline in English, it was all about individuality, breaking free, appealing to a Western audience. But when they translated it into Arabic, it didn't work. Came across as disrespectful, almost rebellious.
Wow, that's a PR nightmare. So it's not just about avoiding offensive stuff. It's about understanding the culture's values, making sure your message aligns with that.
Exactly. And that's where having a translator who's not just good with words, but also like culturally aware, that's key. They got to bridge that gap between cultures,
Yeah.
make sure your message comes across right.
Okay, so legal accuracy, cultural sensitivity, anything else businesses should be thinking about?
Emery talks about this a lot. Consistency. Make sure your branding, your messaging, it's all consistent. Using the same terms, same style across everything. Website, marketing contracts, even internal documents.
That makes sense. Consistency builds trust, right?
Yeah.
Shows you're professional, you know what you're doing.
Exactly. And it avoids confusion. If you're using different terms all over the place, it just makes things messy, harder for your Saudi partners to understand what you're saying.
So it's about having that one clear voice, right? Across all your platforms, all your interactions. We've talked about the challenges, the risks, but let's end on a positive note. What are the good things, the rewards, when you get this right in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, the rewards are huge. When you communicate well, with respect, it opens doors, builds relationships, sets you up for success in the long run. It shows your Saudi partners that you value their culture, that you're serious about doing business there, about building trust.
It's about more than just, making a deal. It's about making a connection.
Exactly. And those connections, they're valuable on a personal level and for business.
So for our listeners who are thinking about doing business in Saudi Arabia, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'd say embrace the challenge. Learning a new language, a new culture, it can be tough, but it's also really rewarding. Be open-minded, willing to learn, respect the Saudi people and their culture. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Get experts on your side, build relationships, ask for help when you need it.
Okay, so we've covered, being accurate with the legal stuff and being sensitive to the culture, but is there anything else businesses need to be aware of when it comes to language in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, Omri, he really stresses this. Being consistent. Your branding, your message, it all need to be consistent, using the same terms, same style, across the board. Website, marketing materials, contracts, even internal documents, everything.
Right, because consistency, that shows you're professional, that you're taking it seriously, right?
Exactly. And it helps avoid confusion.
Hmm.
If you're using different word for the same thing in different places, it gets messy. Your Saudi partners might not understand what you're trying to say.
So it's about like having a unified voice, right, across everything you do. We've talked a lot about the challenges, the things that can go wrong, but let's finish on a positive note. What are the good things that happen when you get the language right in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, the rewards are huge. When you communicate effectively and respectfully, it opens doors. You know,
Uh,
you build strong relationships, you set yourself up for success, long-term success. It shows your Saudi partners that you respect their culture, that you're serious about doing business there, about building that trust.
it's about more than just, the business transaction. It's about building a real connection.
Exactly. And those connections, they're valuable personally and professionally.
So for our listeners out there, those who are, about to jump into the Saudi Arabian market, what's the one piece of advice, the most important thing you want them to remember?
I'd say, embrace the challenge. Learning a new language, a new culture, it's not always easy, but it's so rewarding. Be open. Be willing to learn, respect the Saudi people, their culture. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Find experts. Build those relationships. Ask for help if you need it.
That's great advice. Yeah. It's a good reminder that doing business in a new market, it's a journey, right? And
Yeah.
language, it's like the key that unlocks everything. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a really eye-opening deep dive into the world of language in Saudi Arabia.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, good luck on your ventures in Saudi Arabia. Remember, understanding the language, the culture, that's your path to success. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.